Welcome, people of the... words are hard. Welcome, people of the world, young, old, and eternal. This is the Transcripts of the Moon Witch podcast, hosted by me, Sam, and my sibling, Grit.
Yeah, thank you for turning into our bi-weekly podcast where we share our writing with each other as we work together to build a fantasy world which is not entirely just like our own, but perhaps a little bit cooler.
Just a little bit. This is our first... words are hard. This is our second, kind of third episode, and we're so excited to be sharing it with you. You can find transcripts for this and all of our episodes for free on our Patreon, KoFi! And if you'd like, feel free to become a member for early releases of our podcast and additional episodes where we talk about our lives and relationship to each other and maybe even share some other work we've written that doesn't pertain to this world. We're also doing other stuff there. Check out the page.
KoFi.
See what we're doing.
And as always, our listeners are welcome to join us for whatever episode calls to them. Our podcast is non-linear. So it's made up of one short story each episode, one from each of us. And you don't necessarily need to know what our previous stories have been, because we aren't necessarily going to bring back the same characters or storylines in the following week.
Yeah, let's get into it. How are you doing this week? And do you want to run through what you remember of this world we're doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Pretty stressful week. A lot of existential crises and a lot of, trying to figure out what the fuck I'm doing. But overall, doing okay. And this world, okay. So many things. Oh my god, it's only been one fucking episode and it's so many things. We've established that there are elves in this world. When they're in their, teenage years, they get to be, 6 or 7 feet tall. But then after that, they just start shrinking. So that by the time that they're a couple thousand years old, maybe millions, they are actually the size of... I don't know, tiny, microscopic things, and they actually become viruses, or the size of a virus. It is unclear if elves are the virus or they are fighting a war against viruses to be...
I like the idea that it's both.
Yeah, it's complicated. But so, that's been established about elves. There's also a many miles long dragon worm that hosts an entire city on it. Or inside it, a little unclear. Also, we've established that Uber exists in this world. Reagan was a president.
That's the important part.
Yeah. Reagan was a president at one point. And, obviously, the main fucking thing. So there is a woman witch queen goddess person in the moon who every day does a fate reading of some sort, whether that's tarot cards or rolling dice or whatever. She essentially reads the fortune of the day and then casts that down onto the earth.
In my mind, like a YouTube live stream, but...
God. Yeah. She is somehow using multimedia to get this down to the earth.
I love the idea, in ancient times, people were, going to get the ancient artifacts from which they could get the oracles, foretellings of the day. They would go on mighty quests. They would slay monsters big and small to get these magical objects. And now they just have to log on to the internet. They're like, hey, loyal listeners.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, there is a religion based around her, and it's very quickly become obvious it's a little scammy.
Yeah.
And,
like all religion.
Yeah, it's a religion. I didn't have to say all that other stuff. Yeah, we're going to see what comes of that. In case it wasn't clear, all of this just comes through the short stories that Grit and I write every week. We come up with a foretelling that the Moon Witch has, and then we write a short story based on it and see how it goes. So now we're going to share our short stories for this week, which I believe I'm right in saying both Grid and I had some trouble this week for different reasons in writing our short stories.
Yeah.
But we got them done.
Go us.
We got something to read. Grid, do you want to go first or shall I? You went first last week, so I'm happy to go first this time. I have not had the chance to read your short story.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy for you to go first, but before you do, can you talk about the context of your story, what you want feedback on, what you're bringing to the table?
Yeah. I want feedback on. So two things I'm really working on are creating settings. Like, I think I'm really good at ideas and like, oh, this is this fun area that they're in, but I'm really bad at describing where they're at. Because when I read stories, I glaze over that stuff. Like, I do not read that the bricks were gray or that the bed was a red oak with a little heart carved into the center. I don't read that stuff, so I don't write it. And then when all of my beta readers read my stuff, they're like, Sam, I have no idea where they are. Like, cool stuff is happening, but I can't place it. So it's something I really need to work on. And so I am working on that, like creating setting in a way that doesn't feel overdone to me, but it's still like satisfying to understand. And also, I write too big. Like when I did a short story for a friend and it turned into like 25,000 words. And it's like, this is over the top. We need to figure out how to condense some of this stuff. So I'm really trying to work at making my short stories for this have a beginning, middle, and end, have some kind of narrative, but do it really quickly. And I'm really struggling with it so far. I'm a much bigger fan of like continuation fiction, so this is a good exercise for me. And so what I want feedback on is how the setting feels to you. Like, can you envision the area that this story takes place in, and does the ending satisfy at all? For me, it doesn't. It's just spoilers. It doesn't satisfy me. But I want to get a sense of if my tastes are just a little over the top. I don't know. I just want to get that vibe. And I don't really care about grammar or spelling mistakes because I am going to see them as I read and they are going to stab into my soul. So why deal with that twice? Yeah, I would love to also hear like feedback on characters, like how the characters are. I think that's something I've been getting a lot better at, building characters, but it's still something I feel like I'm working on. So let's jump into it.
Hell yeah.
A red-furred cat dances its way through the field of lavender, all cares of the world lost in this moment of freedom. Licentious's eyes glazed over as her mind whirred with the implications of the Moon Witch's prophecy, so much so that she didn't hear the end of the foretelling. She was too busy imagining a life spent doing as she wanted. How glorious it was to imagine. How terrifying. Liza, I can't reach the crumb cabinet, came a cry from the other room, wrenching Liza back into reality. She was perched on the edge of her bed in a slate-gray chamber, the striations of the wall running straight upwards. After several seconds, the floor would rumble as Rethaugir, the dragon and walking city in which she resided, took another step. All Liza desired was to close her eyes and go back to the world of the cat dancing freely through the lavender. But she knew that every moment she made her husband Everett wait was another minute of yelling she would have to endure. With a sigh, Liza rose, her 2.5-foot frame nearly scraping the ceiling as she sauntered into the kitchen. There she found Everett, a foot-tall elf in a blue shirt and a red cap pulled so tight over his head as to wrap around his bulbous nose. The traditional clothes made Liza roll her eyes in disdain. Surely the man could have taken on a new fashion style in the past 1,000 years. "What do you need, dearest?" she said, her voice taking on a sickly sweet tone. "You know what I need, wench. You keep putting the beef crumbs where I can't reach them. How am I supposed to grow small and strong if I can't eat any beef?" Her tiny husband shrieked, leaping into the air as he tossed his hands about expressively. Liza rubbed her temples in a vain attempt to stave off the encroaching headache, but she never flinched. The one single, solitary, absolutely lonely advantage to being married to the same person for 1,400 years is that you eventually learn the limits of their wrath. While Everett was obnoxious and cruel, he had long ago learned to not attempt physical violence on Liza. The Dark Ages had been a very satisfying time for her. Stop standing there and put your overgrown legs to use, you oaf! Yes, dear, Liza said with a sigh. What else was she to do? Everett would have already moved to a new apartment were it not for her size, even though their current apartment was too small for her already. The only way a marriage survives is through compromise, after all. And that's also the only way Liza had any hope of finding peace and quiet. Another rumble rattled the crystal cabinets, but Liza simply waited a moment and then reached up to grasp the large jar of beef chunks that Everett insisted on having in the house. The top shelf was the only spot where the dragon lice wouldn't get at them. As Liza began to slide it into her hands, another, larger and offbeat quake rumbled through the floor. Liza gasped in surprise as the jar slipped from her fingers to land on the floor with a splat. Careful, young one. You can't go waltzing about these parts like it's your fancy-dancy Midwestern town. These are civilized parts where every motion has consequences. I'd hate to see you squish anybody with those classy shoes of yours, chattered a monotone voice from out on the street. Old Silas. Liza strutted to the door, opening it enough to behold to whom the young oaf was chattering. Proper grammar sometimes just sounds terrible. A tendon in her neck creaked as she craned her neck to look up at the towering elf looming above her. He was leaning against one of the dragon scales that made up the city buildings, his massive foot inches from Liza's door. A sojourner, worse than tourists. They were always angsty and angry about their lives being ruined. Liza would take 1,000 marriages to Everett over being that senseless ever again. Taking her own children on sojourn had been particularly nightmarish. Not wanting to interact with the youth... Not wanting to interact with the youth and risk getting his teenage angst all over her, she quietly shut the door and turned back to Everett, who was gone. He wasn't in the room. Liza cocked her head. Had God finally heard her prayers? In an example of perfectly horrid timing, this thought coincided with the exact moment that Liza saw Everett's tiny limbs splayed out underneath the glass jar of dried beef. Rushing forward, Liza yanked the glass off her husband, her hand instinctively moving to check his pulse and pump his lungs. But there was no point. The elf was as flat as a pancake. Tears prickled at the corners of Liza's eyes. For all her complaints about Everett, he had been constant? Consistent? Now that Liza was forced to think about things she would miss about the old elf, nothing came to mind. That couldn't be right, could it? After 1,400 years together, their sudden separation should have been more devastating. Instead, Liza simply felt numb. Out of that numb void, one thought was omnipresent in her mind. Everett's parents will never let me live this down. If Everett was annoying, then his parents would be nightmarish. If they found out that their darling boy had died in the same room as Liza, they would instantly blame her and make her life a living hell. They were in the cellular cities of Rethaugir's Head, the classiest of all living arrangements, which was far enough from Liza's mid-spine apartment that they wouldn't catch wind of this all immediately. But Liza had to act fast. She wiped her tears and grabbed one of the homing flies she kept for emergencies. She was going to need help. As the fly took off through the tight city streets lined with dragon scales, Liza felt her heart lighten, and she could practically smell the lavender. So, a little bit of an open ending.
Okay. So, let me start with the stuff that I love about this. Wow. What a horrible marriage. I'm so glad it ended. I was so relieved. I love the just like the morbidity of it. The just like, and so he died. His legs splayed out. Like, oh my god. And then her just not being able to remember a single thing she would miss. I was like, holy fuck, this is too good. Like, this is fucked up. Just fucked.
Yeah, that was one of those moments where I was like, man, I should make this sad. I should make her love him. And then I just thought about the character I'd written. I was like, I don't think there's anything to love.
Damn.
I didn't feel anything.
That is harsh.
Like, that process of her, like, stopping and looking through it, that mirrored me, being like, what does she miss? And
oh my god.
I
am really enjoying the cavalier way of you just killing elves all the fucking time. Like, you know, in like Lord of the Rings, like that's a big fucking deal. Like, oh no, the elf died, but not to you. These guys are dying all over the place. Jesus Christ.
They, like I said, her children. In my mind, she has had at least 30 kids. Like,
holy fuck.
There is a reason there's an entire city dedicated only to elves on a massive dragon, and that's just one culture. Like, these people live for thousands of years at least. Like, they're non-stop. They're just...
Oh my god. Wow. Yeah, I also really loved his outfit. I was just like, oh my god, this is so, like, the stereotype. Yeah. It's perfect.
Like the Keebler elf classic.
Yeah.
Classic thing.
Yeah. And also, like, very Smurfy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was thinking of the Smurfs as I drew him. Also like dwarves, but...
yeah.
A little different. There's one detail in here that's like definitely explainable, but did complicate the whole elf size thing.
Mm-hmm.
Cause like she's at least 1,500 years old. In my head, she's like 300 years younger than Everett, but still she's 500 years older than Silas, and she is taller than Silas. And I mean, that can kind of make sense that women would shrink slower than men because they have to like birth children, and so it makes sense for them to be a little bigger for a little longer. But it is a bit of a snag that I kind of threw in there without thinking. But
yeah, I mean, I think the whole size to age ratio is very complicated.
Yeah, that's one thing I've been struggling with.
I think it makes the most sense, it's the most realistic if it stays murky like that.
Yeah.
Because...
like, some people shrink faster than others.
Yeah. And, like, there's just a lot of diversity amongst even humans in our world, so it doesn't really make sense for it to be super, calculated.
That makes sense. I like that. I also... I don't know if you noticed my little note of how am I going to grow small and strong without some beef?
Oh, I loved that. That was great. Yeah.
Like you gotta eat a lot to get smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything else you liked, or do you have some feedback?
I mean, overall, I thought the story was really great. I thought it was really engaging because it feels different for you. Of, like, it's sort of I guess there is a death at the end, but... it's a little bit more in the minutia of a day-to-day rather than like sort of, big, intense monster coming your way. What do you do? So I enjoyed hearing that.
Well, a teenager was coming her way.
Oh yeah, that whole thing was hilarious. Doesn't want the teenage angst getting on her. That was perfect. I think, so feedback. I'm trying to... pull up what I had just thought. So I definitely had some moments where I was like, oh, I can picture this, and then other parts where I'm like, wait, no, I'm confused. And here's my question. Do people live inside the dragon or on top of him?
Yeah, my wording was really unclear. In my mind, it is a little bit of both. Like, there's like little wooden shanties built around the scales, but like this apartment was carved out of a scale. And I realized as I was reading this, I never explicitly said that.
Okay.
But like that's why I describe like the striations, like the lines of like the scale. You know, everything organic has those little lines. In the first scene, that was like the lines of the scale. But I never actually fucking said we are in a scale.
Yeah, that would have been cool details to have.
Yeah.
There was like definitely things where it's like, oh, like the crystal cabinets, like these things I can see, they make sense to me. But because I didn't know if they were inside the dragon, I was like, is the lighting really like dark and red and like kind of like they're in guts right now? Or is it more, you know, out in the open and there's like actual sunlight? I don't know. I think I definitely noticed like a concerted effort to like make the apartment a little bit more engageable with the reader, like the explaining of the top shelf and like all of these things.
But I still kind of I failed in that initial setting. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this piece is relatively short. I think you could have done with doing a paragraph or two where you're just explaining what's happening in there. It maybe would have fucked up pacing somewhat, but
I completely agree with you. I was struggling with like I've a prescription snafu led to me not having my ADHD medication for this past week, and God, there were some parts of this I had fun writing. Like I am realizing like parts of my ADHD, like there are things I can hyper focus on and enjoy writing, but then like writing out the minutia of like where we are, descriptions of the place, that just gives me the biggest stomach aches, and it's just so hard to push through.
Interesting.
And so I like every setting detail I actually struggled to like force in there. And yeah, that was an interesting thing about myself I learned writing this. Just because I was kind of looking for it, but yeah, you're totally right.
I wonder if it would shift if you started thinking about the location as a character.
Oh, interesting.
Like a silent character that is in the place. Because you do really well at describing characters, and I think you do a good job of like establishing personality in your stories. So what if you treated the setting itself as a character?
Oh, I like that.
Because, okay, also, maybe this is bad writing advice, but for me, I have a better sense of a location if I know what color lighting is going on.
Interesting.
Which also, like, we'll listen to my piece and we'll realize I did no setting work whatsoever in this piece, and I didn't talk about lighting at all. So, like, you know, whatever, fuck it, but that's one thing that I think about sometimes in terms of creating setting.
I like that. I can see how that would matter. I really like how different authors have different things they lock into. I dig that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, I'll work on that for my next piece, using the setting as a character. I think that'll be really helpful. And also think about lighting. It's so funny. For the viewers at home, I was like a lighting designer major in college. Like that's why I got my theater degree in. And I don't give a butts about the lighting color. I just don't think about it. And so I should work on that, if nothing else for my pride. It wasn't all a waste, I swear. Is there anything that, like, I came away finishing this short story, I was like, this is fine. It didn't really affect the world at all, right? Like, little bit of, like, cellular city, whatever the heck that means, but some traditional elf clothing, and that's fine. As we go through the short stories, I think it is important to identify, like, how does this affect the world moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this really established elves even further, where it's like, oh, they do have monogamous relationships that last for their entire goddamn lives, which is interesting. It's not actually how I would have written them.
Well, I do think, like, it's an important thing, like, there's, in humans, there's thousands of cultures, and I think in fiction, we so often, like, homogenize elves.
Yeah.
Like, the best you get is like, oh, these are the high elves and these are the wood elves, and then those are the drow, the dark elves that live underground, and that's like the extent of the cultural differences you get.
Right.
And I think that's boring as hell.
Yeah, well, especially if there's so fucking many that they're all of the goddamn viruses.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so I think that's one thing I actually wanted to explore in my upcoming short stories, like different approaches to relationships. Because like Eliza's whole thing is kind of like, oh, this was stupid. Like, this has been miserable being married to this person.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are good, like, there are definitely good experiences of being married forever with the elves. I don't know if I'll ever write about them, but I think those exist. But I think just as many elves are like, yo, that's a dumb idea. Like, why would we be together forever? That's stupid.
Right.
That's a long time for us. And yeah, how do you think you would have written them though?
Oh, I think I would have just played with polyamory more. But that's because I'm always craving more representation. So
no, I think polyamory makes a lot more sense for elven cultures. I just I wanted to start with something a little more similar to our generally accepted culture, and then kind of tear it apart from there. But I would agree with that statement for sure. For sure. The statement being polyamory makes a lot more sense for people who live forever.
Yeah. But,
I think, unless you got anything else, I'm good to get on to your story.
Okay. Was there feedback that you were wanting? Stuff that I didn't hit?
I don't think so. You, oh, what'd you think of the ending?
I kind of loved the ending. It just felt floofy in this way that I really enjoyed, because it's about her husband fucking dying, and then it's just like, well, I gotta figure out how to get away with this.
I'm free now.
Yeah.
Oh, one kind of limitation I've realized about this short story format we're doing is if every short story is based off of a new foretelling from the Oracle, that means every short story is based on a new day.
Yes.
And so there is like that limitation of like days pass every time we write a short story. But
yeah. Okay, I maybe fucked up some shit when we get into my story, but you're gonna accept it and it's gonna be fine. So
cool.
That's great.
I'm excited. Well, how about we get into it then? You've piqued my interest.
So for my story, I also had a really hard time writing this. I actually really had fun with it, but it feels like it was one of those things where I like started with like an idea and then was really like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with this. And so then I just had to keep on writing to figure out how it was gonna end. So in some ways the ending itself, I'm sort of like, is this a cop-out? I don't know. But it was fun to write. It's mostly like I felt like it established other kinds of creatures that exist in this world that I enjoyed. In terms of feedback, I guess I'm interested in what you feel like I did to the world, because maybe I fucked up some things. And I guess I'm interested to hear if you feel like I deal with the sort of creatures that I'm like talking about in a way that like feels good. Like, am I engaging with them enough or too much? Do they need more explanation? Yeah, I guess I'm also just interested in the pacing that I created, if it translates to other people, I guess.
All right, 6. So you're looking for opinions on effect on world, pacing, and what was the middle one?
What was the middle one? Oh, I guess just if the creatures that I create and introduce need more explanation, or how you feel about that.
World, creatures, pacing. Sounds great.
Okay, I will start then. The devil and cats, oh my. Lavender and beef for sure. Only independence strive for something like that. Come on, you get it. It's good enough for today.
Sorry, go on.
Dylan walked down the city block towards his house, mumbling to himself as he went. Maybe I could just get some falafel going, or pulled pork. Jesus Christ, what am I gonna do? We don't even have buns for hot dogs. The street was bustling as grandmothers brought out the trash, the mailman made deliveries, and parents dragged their screaming kids out of the house for school pickup. Monday mayhem all around. Dylan almost had his knee kicked out by a 6-year-old, but he hardly noticed as he moved around the family and reached the crosswalk. I could get some vegan hamburgers, maybe? Dylan looked up at the sky, hands in his hair. Wait, said the crosswalk. Wait, traffic is moving. What do those vegans do? Tofu? Chickpeas? Hey, Dylan, said the crosswalk. Hey, buddy. Wait. Dylan looked up at the graded neon sign. Oh, hey, guy. Dylan normally tried to ignore the poltergeist in the crosswalk sign. He was way more chipper than Dylan could usually handle, but a few years back the sign had somehow figured out his name, and it made it way more difficult to pretend you never heard him now. Wait. Hey, why so glum, huh? Think it's anything to do with that thing behind you? Wait. Dylan turned around. Nothing there. Yeah, okay, guy, I don't have time for the ghosty tricks today. Huh. Wait. Interesting stuff. So, what's got you all freaked out? Dylan exhaled. Traffic was moving too quickly for him to cross without the light, and the ghost would be on the other side as soon as he got there anyway. Just, a beef crisis. Oh yeah. 3rd day in a row she pulled beef. Wait. Gotta be bad for business. Yep. Sure is. Dylan felt like a pressure cooker about to blow open. Guts everywhere right on the sidewalk. Fuck this crosswalk. Fuck the rich fucks buying up all the beef. And fuck the Moon Queen. Well, light's turning now. Have a safe crossing and all, said the crosswalk sign. Dylan propelled himself forward so quickly he almost tripped into the gutter, but made it across the road in 2 seconds. But seriously, you might want to get that infestation checked out. Pretty nasty one, called the crosswalk as Dylan continued his panicked march home. Dylan, said the downstairs tabby cat, swishing his tail with each syllable. What are you bringing home today? Dylan was stepping up to the porch of his duplex. What are you talking about now, Luther? Said Dylan, leaning against the railing. Your shadow. It's contaminated. Dylan sighed and lit a Pall Mall. Luther, I have always been a good tenant. I've paid on time. I've never made excessive noise. Not true. The blonde one. With her, you are always making too much noise. Well, that wasn't excessive. I mean, you gotta look at her. I am not interested in your misogynistic kitchen jokes, Dylan. Cooks are all the same here. No. I am interested in your shadow. You cannot bring it inside. What's wrong with my shadow? Dylan swiveled around, trying to see where his shadow was landing on the porch. Listen, I don't have time. He stood up and flicked his cigarette to the curb. I'm supposed to open in 2 hours, and we've got no meat for burgers, and I have to figure my shit out. I'll catch you around, Luther. He started stalking toward the entry. No, said the tabby, walking to stand directly in the doorway. Dylan considered kicking him for a minute, but then remembered Luther's connections and reconsidered. Jesus Christ. Dylan pinched the bridge of his nose. Fine, just fine. Tell me what the hell you're seeing, demon cat. I am not a demon. I'm a devil. Luther grinned, and an extra layer of needly teeth became visible inside his jaws. Dylan tried to keep his face level as the goosebumps rose on his arms. There's something hiding in your shadow. They appear to be one of those codependent, parasitic-type soul suckers. Not unlike mistletoe, really. So, is it, gonna kill me? Or just, slowly eke away my lifeblood? Dylan said, looking over his shoulder. His shadow looked normal to him. Oh, is it like that firefighter guy from a few months ago? No, I don't believe this one will make you crazy. You're already there all on your own. The cat was looping around Dylan now, pupils dilated. No, this is fresh anyway. Seems like it only hopped aboard a few hours ago. And it doesn't appear like it's trying to bind you. More like using you for transport to someone or something with better fortitude. Luther, why are you always so rude? Simply honest, human. Let me try some things. Luther went inside and quickly came out carrying a loaded basket in his mouth. You must call in sick today. Luther grumbled about the impossibility of that for a few moments, but quickly shut up when Luther started swatting him with a bundle of lavender, the little purple flowers flying all over the porch. Be gone, hissed the cat. Get the fuck out of here. Dylan
Magic ritual. I'm sorry.
Dylan looked behind him and realized Luther was in a full-on battle, swiping his claws along his shadow, kicking his feet. Dylan decided to stay really still for a little bit. After a few minutes, when Luther's thrashing and growling had quieted, Dylan slowly looked behind him to see the devil cat lying on the porch panting. Is it gone? That guy? Nah, he might be with you for the long haul, Dee, said Luther. And Dylan wondered if Luther had been drugged somehow. The cat was never so informal with him, unless Luther was drunk or on the catnip again. So what am I supposed to do? Said Dylan. Well, I think you should call that blonde lady back and see if she'll pack up your apartment for you, 'cause you can't go inside with that thing, and that thing ain't going nowhere. What? I have rights. Section 24B. Landlords hold the right to terminate service immediately upon tenant becoming haunted, plagued, possessed, infested, or otherwise enchanted by any disembodied being. Y'all just fucking run this place, don't you? Corrupt as hell. Luther opened one eye and grinned. Well, yes, but in this case it's just safety in the most common sense. Dylan grunted and sat on the steps. Well, fuck. 3 months later, Dylan was living under his aunt's porch. No landlord would allow him to cross their threshold, but his auntie was able to create a loophole so that he could at least stay close to her. It was a decent situation for now. She fed him, didn't mind dumping his waste bucket, and heated water for him to wash every night. But it was getting to be fall now, and Dylan wasn't sure what to do when it became really cold out. His food truck had gone out of business. Between the demon possession and the moon witch drawing beef for 3 months in a row, it just hadn't been able to keep afloat. Next time, don't go putting so much emphasis on any one thing, said his auntie. Didn't have to just be a hamburger stand. Could have had popcorn there too. And a soup or something. Dylan rolled his eyes at her. Yeah, well, at least I wasn't the only one making mistakes there. The whole beef industry had collapsed under the weight of excessive demand from the last 3 months. The rich believers had bought every bit of beef from the market. It was impossible to get beef broth or to find actual cow's milk these days, since people had even started buying dairy cows to slaughter. There weren't any cattle to buy. Even the black market couldn't conjure them up. All the food markets and restaurants were struggling these days, and conspiracy theories were flying. Maybe the government will actually pass that financial aid bill for the beef people, said his auntie. I mean, if they didn't pass it for the soap makers back then, I don't see why they'd pass one now, said Dylan. Since homelessness and the truck closing, he'd become pretty apathetic to things. Sometimes he wondered if it was the effects of the shadow possession, or if he just didn't really care anymore. He shrugged. At least he had Wi-Fi under the porch. One day, Dylan woke up shivering. The first frost had arrived. His auntie brought out a steaming cup of coffee. All right now, baby. It's time to get serious about that thing you've got clinging to you. Time for you to call that lady. Dylan nodded. He'd hoped the demon would leave on its own at some point out of boredom, but no such luck. Now it was time for something drastic, extreme even. Now he had to call Carly.
Oh, that's so fun. Amazing. I really enjoyed that. That you did manage to very quickly make this world a dystopia, but
I mean, capitalism already existed in this world.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, like, I guess since we already stated it was kind of in modern now, but magic, that was already implied. But
yeah.
I just watched like a video last night where this guy was talking about how like every quote unquote common sense land law that you can think of has like can just have terrible results that you just don't expect. Like in California, a bunch of old people were going homeless because property taxes were increasing. So they put a cap on property taxes in California. But now, 30 years later, all of the houses have just ballooned in value because the owners didn't have to dump all this money into property taxes, so no young people can afford a house. And that just kind of strikes me as Section 24B. Like, of course you don't want somebody bringing a ghost into your house. That seems reckless, but then you're forcing them onto the street.
Yeah, and I thought about creating like a weird like ghost shelter sort of situation, and then I was like, I can't. Like, it's too much for today.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of creation work. I also really love the vibe of, well, you can sleep under my porch, honey.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's so terrible. At least he has Wi-Fi. That really hit me. And also, I really like the idea of Section 24B being, like, called on by a devil cat. Like, I might be evil, but that's fucked up. I don't want that ghost in here. I think, was the thing you said you fucked up it being that time skip?
Yeah, and the fact that she drew one card for 30 days, as I was assuming as part of multiple card draws.
But I heard that and I was like, this continues my argument that she draws 9 cards every day and we just talk about a couple of them. That's how I took that. But yeah, that sounds like a you problem that I'm sure you can solve. I really, really like that Carly, this very like sweet character that we met last week, hunting for Nightshade and doing a bunch of rituals, is so scary that this dude waited 3 months living under his porch before calling her. That like she has this reputation that we just haven't seen. That just makes her so like, all right, I guess we gotta call her.
Yeah.
I love that. I wish I had been able to read this before, simply because like right now, I don't have much like negative feedback. I adored this story. I think you could hear me cackling the whole way through. It was so fun. I was sad. I was so sad for this guy Dylan. Like everything made me so bummed for him. But that is kind of life sometimes. You really managed to make all of these very cute things, like the talking crosswalk sign, which I would take a whole short story of just that guy. Wait, so how's your day going? Like that was so good, and you did the voice perfectly. And like the cat landlord, who one of the most common words they said was no. They said no in almost every sentence, which is like, this is so cat. It's all of it's like so cute and yet like so scary, like very intimidating in a way. It had a very like Studio Ghibli or Ghibli vibe to it.
Interesting. Okay.
That I really liked. Like very magical, but in a like nothing's changed. It's just there's magic in ordinary things kind of a way. Yeah. That I really enjoyed. And I think that's very clever. Yeah. I'm looking at my little notes I've scribbled here. I don't think this was purposeful what you did. I want to get your opinion on it. You said even the black market couldn't conjure up more cows. Was that just a turn of phrase? Like them, or was that there's a market where they like magically summon?
Oh yeah. I like very much was like, oh, this is kind of a double entendre. And I very much want there to be the black market that solely just conjures up shit, but is probably all like, you know, bullshit. It's like the like fucking what's the knockoff of Etsy?
Ooh, knockoff of Etsy?
It's like Wish or something.
Oh, Wish.com?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
but
that
something where it's
sounds
just
right.
like, oh, this isn't actually what I thought I was gonna be getting. It's not what I paid for.
Yeah, you can get a thing of wireless earbuds for $3 off of Wish.com.
Yeah, that shit doesn't work. So don't spend your $3, folks. But yeah, it was sort of what I was thinking could be possible with that.
Yeah, that sounds so right. I like also the idea, like, there's two ways that could go. One is like that becomes the main capitalist thing of like, why would we fund a factory when we can just have these wizards making everything? But the other path is like, yo, I spent all this money on this factory. We can't let these wizards put me out of business. Ban them. I really enjoy that. Big kick out of that. And then this is kind of just a cultural question. Glub. Why so glub, buddy? Is that a word? Glub?
Yeah.
I've heard glum. I've never heard glub.
Oh, did I make up a word? I'm pretty sure that's a word.
I mean, that sounds like a Midwestern word. Like, that is a word that I could definitely see being... Yeah, well, so the dictionary is like a gurgling, bubbling, or gulping sound, an inarticulate, strangled sound. But, like, that sounds like something that could definitely be, like, a Midwestern turn of phrase that I just don't know. But, so that's why I wanted to ask.
Oh, no, I definitely made this word up. I thought it was, like, an old-timey kind of, thing.
Okay, I mean, it sounds a lot like glum, which 100% fits there.
Yeah, I'll just change that to glum.
Alright, or you could just keep it glub. Like, I kind of loved that, but...
Yeah, we'll see what I do.
I'm really... I think I don't want you to answer this. I want to, like, be surprised for the next episode, but I'm really curious what you're going to do next time. Like, are we continuing the story of Dylan, or did you set up, like, yo, he needs to talk to this chick and his problems are solved, let's go to the next thing? I'm excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, me too, because I totally thought I was gonna be talking more about, like, Rocco and shit, and then we got this fucking draw, and I was like, well, that's definitely not my vibe right now, so I guess we're doing different people.
I think, you know, and maybe we don't need to do this. It might be fine to not at all do this, but it might serve us to, like, you know, our ways of, like, writing out the Moon Witch's prophecies are very different, and it might serve us to, like, write it up before we go, so, like, we both have the same one. I'm also okay with not doing that, because it's kind of fun seeing how we interpret it.
Well, I feel like the main thing is, like, it's important that we interpret it differently, because everybody in this world is interpreting it differently.
Well, I mean, that's definitely true, and we should interpret, like, how it affects the world differently, but I mean, you wrote, the devil and cats, oh my, lavender and beef for sure, only independent strive for I, or something like that. Come on, you get it, it's good enough for today. That's what she said in your story. And what she said in mine is, a Redford cat dances its way through the field of lavender, all cares of the world lost in this moment of freedom. And then she said some other stuff. So I guess that could have been, like, she said your stuff after she said what I said, but my point is, like, we're definitely, like, riding the line of she says different things in our different stories.
Yeah, I think we should definitely ride the chaos train on that. Maybe think about it the way that different weathermen will give the same forecast, but they say it differently.
Wait, but they're looking at the same live stream, right?
Yeah, but it could also be people being like, oh, like, here's it could even be on the news of like, well, this is what the Moon Witch said today.
Okay.
Like, I would imagine
I'm
there's
totally chill with
various ways of that information being spread.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think we talked last week about there being people whose whole job is just podcasts interpreting the Moon Witch, and yeah, I think news sites would definitely do that. Okay, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I like that. Just wanted to verbalize it. In terms of the stuff you said, I think you have made the world, like, interestingly, like, more terrifying, not in that there are devil cat landowners and
also
shadow...
Go ahead.
Oh, no, say what you wanted to say.
Oh, I need to clarify that there is the line in there where he says, y'all run this place, don't you? Maybe I should have made this clearer. I have decided that in this world, all landowners, all landlords are devils.
I would really like that to be all landlords in the city that you're in.
All of them. Fine, yeah, in this city, that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's totally fine that they're trying to own all the cities. I would just like there to be a little more back and forth.
Okay. Fine, nothing is forever.
If you're
everything.
okay with that compromise.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
All right, I do like that idea though. The devil, yeah, they're landowners. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's depressing and fun. I really want to learn more about devils. Like, are they possessing the cat? Do they all just look like cats? What's going on with that?
I think they can look however they decide. They're shapeshifters.
Oh, so that's just the form it shows. Yeah, I loved the cat landlord. I want to be clear, that was so good. It was a dick, but I really liked it.
Cool.
Very cat-like. I really like how you have made increased the world in this. But yeah, as I was saying, you added in like poltergeists who possess crosswalk signs, poltergeists who possess shadows, and none of those are as scary as just the cool realism of capitalism. It was just so horrifying. Just, according to this section, I could kick you out on a moment's notice. Which immediately brought to my mind, like, what, so could you just make somebody you don't like possessed? Could you just intentionally possess people? Like, expose them to things so you can kick them out on a whim? Just horrid stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just so, like, real life.
Yeah. Fucked.
Love that. The creatures I think I've gone into, I adored them.
Did you feel like you needed
horrifying.
more details about them?
No, I don't think so. Well, let me go through just to be sure. I don't want to be flippant. Yeah, like the crosswalk sign, I guess, like, I wanted more of the crosswalk sign. Like, I wanted to learn more about it. Like, was it just a singular poltergeist that would infect crosswalk signs near Dylan, or was this like a citywide thing? But I don't know if I needed more info on it for this story, right? Like, I feel like I might have gone as much info as I needed for this experience, but you definitely left me wanting more about it. I think Luther is pretty clear. Luther's pretty obvious. I didn't realize it was a shapeshifter, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of focused on the cat part.
It was a talking cat devil. Yeah. Like, you can get to shapeshifter pretty easy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of would have been interested to learn more about how this shadow is affecting Dylan's life. In the way, like, I know how it was affecting Dylan's life in how people treated him because of its presence, but I never really got what it's actually doing, you know?
Yeah.
It seemed like a pretty innocuous thing.
Yeah. I think for me, what I sort of was doing with it that I should have maybe made more clear is that, like, it wasn't impacting Dylan very much.
Okay.
Or his aunt.
That's kind of...
It's just that other, devils, demons, ghosts, poltergeists can see this thing and they aren't cool with it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And in that case, I think you played it right. That it's like, this thing wasn't doing anything. It's just an excuse for people to mistreat Dylan, which makes a lot of sense. I just, I wasn't sure if I was missing something. Yeah, I thought the pacing was great. That 3 months later was a little, like, abrupt, but it felt really fitting. Like, get the fuck out. Yeah, I mean, it ends with, well, fuck. And then 3 months later, he's living underneath a porch. Yeah, that was the right call to say, well, fuck, Dylan. Yeah, I think your pacing was really good. I'm so fascinated to learn more about Carly's reputation that living underneath a porch is preferable to going to her. I'm just so boggled. But yeah.
Yeah,
she
I'll
seemed
have to
really
deal
nice.
with her.
She seemed really lovely. I guess that's the difference of like hanging out with your friends versus strangers, but. And I guess she did go on a whole day's thing looking for deadly nightshade, and then tripped in a backyard. But
It seems like regular shit.
seems pretty normal. Yeah, I guess I'm just curious. Like, is it reputation or is it her? Like, is it actions that she's done that have caused this, or is it just the way people talk about her to strangers? And that's something I'm excited for you to explore. I really kind of like how we're both kind of exploring two very different cities and like worlds.
We gotta fuse them more though.
I was about to say, we're gonna have to come up with some bridges.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay if we don't do that immediately, but definitely having a worlds collide has to happen at some point.
Yeah.
I think that might be really easy to do with this dragon, Rethal Gear. He's going somewhere. Why not Minneapolis?
Well, I think also what we do need to do is like I need to write in the world that you're creating and you have to write in my world.
That's definitely true. I'm very stressed to write in your world because I don't know much about Minneapolis, and I just love what you're doing with it.
It's fine.
It's fine. I know. I just like it's really easy for you to write in like the city of Rethal Gear because it's just a bunch of made up shit. You can just make up more. And you're definitely right. It's just like, I think one reason I don't want to write in Minneapolis is because I just want to read more about what you write in Minneapolis.
You gotta get over this. You gotta write something.
I do. I think that's definitely true. I have more I want to write in Rethal Gear first, personally.
Okay.
It definitely depends on the prompt for this week, but I definitely have some ideas for what's going forward.
So, I feel like we've talked about sort of how what I wrote has impacted the world overall. I do feel like we should probably start moving towards the forecast for the next episode.
Yeah, I think that's important. I do want to say here, I think it might be a good idea in the future if our fans in our Discord or Patreon or something, we'll figure out a system, submit ideas for future forecast. And then that could make this a little more clean for us, but I'm fine with doing how we did it last week for now.
Yeah.
So fucking random word generator and oh god, oh that's fine. Oh Jesus.
You okay?
I have this like half melted silver goblet that I've just been filling with burnt matches and like used up herbs and stuff, and it just spilled on the ground, so I got a bunch of like burnt stuff all over my floor now. Cool. It's fine. So I am drawing from the Voyager tarot deck. I got balance.
Yeah, I could go with balance.
All right, love it.
And I drew the elk and ash, which is a symbol for strength.
Love that. Elk and ash. And I realized after I started writing this last one, like we should probably write these down.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Oh, cool. So it's just me. I'm the problem. Sick. That makes sense. That tracks.
And if you want a random word generator, I have pulled up the word net.
net. Cool. So the Moon Witch has pulled at least the tarot card of balance. They're in a word net, the card elk and ash, and then the word beef.
No, not beef. The word net. Oh, yeah, the word
no,
beef.
I know.
Fuck.
I mean, so I guess this is a thing we need to talk about. I had planned for my next story to be the next day. And then you did a 3-month time jump. And I don't know if you want to explore that story in the next session, but it does pose some interesting questions for the time frame of this all.
Yes. Okay, well, we'll have to figure that out at a later date. Good luck.
You get to figure it out later. I like that. Cool. So rad. All right, then we will meet up next week.
Yeah.
I feel like we've made some great progress here today. Do you feel like we're going to start closing?
Yeah, I feel like that's where we're at this point.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So thank you so much for sharing with me today and for all the work you do to keep this podcast going. I love you.
Yeah, thank you. I really look forward to recording with you, and I appreciate all of the shit that you're doing for this podcast. Sam is our only sound editor at this point in time because I can't do technology.
And I'm doing what I can. It ain't much, Chief.
Oh,
I
love you too.
I'm doing something. Amazing. So we'd like to give a special thank you to Natalie Becker for our amazing cover art, which looks really pretty. Our parents for giving birth to us, and Grit's partner Luz for keeping them sane as they do this work. I'd like to specifically special thanks my dog Mogi. He's a good boy. He lets me give him belly pats.
Mogi's my dog who stays and lives with my parents.
Well, all right. It's been 4 years, but yeah.
I think it's been 2.
You dropped him off in 2020, right?
December of 2020.
December, right? So it's only been 3 years. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to like our podcast and subscribe and all of the things that we're supposed to say at the end of a podcast. You know, the things. But we look forward to tuning in with you in 2 weeks' time, assuming that you want to do that, for the transcripts of the Moon Witch podcast.
Woo! Until then, stay safe and keep your ears open for any moonbeams that may shine upon you.
All the best. Love you. Grit and Sam.
Bye.
Okay, you lead one.
Oh, fuck. This is a repeat song.
This is a repeat song.
A peanut sat on a railroad track.
A peanut sat on a railroad track.
His heart was all aflutter.
His heart was all aflutter.
Down the line came engine 9.
Down the line came engine 9.
Choo-choo.
Choo-choo.
Peanut butter.
Peanut butter. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's not a repeat song, but it works.
The morbidity is just outrageous.
Yeah, they really wanted to teach those camp kids death comes for us all, even cute little peanuts.
Jesus Christ.
Maybe especially cute little peanuts.
The Princess Pat.
The Princess Pat
Lived in a tree.
lived in a tree,
And she sailed across.
and she sailed across
The 7 seas.
the 7 seas,
And she sailed across.
and she sailed across
The Channel too.
the channel too.
And she took with her
And she took with her
a brick of bamboo.
a brick of bamboo.
A brick of bamboo.
A brick of bamboo.
Now what is that?
Now what is that?
It's a something made
It's something made
by the Princess Pat.
by the Princess Pat.
It's red and gold.
It's red and gold.
And purple too.
And purple too.
That's why it's called
That's why it's called.
a brick of bamboo.
You know what? I think a minute of Princess Pat's enough. It is a reminder that most camp songs are made for children. It's like
Yes.
it's red and gold. Remember, it's red and gold, kids.